No, you ready? Okay. Is the mic on? Testing. Okay. Testing one, two. Okay, if everyone can have a seat, we're about to get started.
JP, you have to plug it into your computer. Oh no, mine controls the stream, but I just have to follow you. Yeah.
Get the pouring off. Some food. Okay, you ready? You good? Thank you all for coming. My name is April Dawson, and I am the marketing director for EOS Detroit. We know you could have been anywhere tonight, and we are so excited that you decided to be here with us for our 2022 kickoff season. EOS Detroit and Meetup go way back. Some of the great minds of our team actually met up at a meetup just like this one. So we know that when like-minded people gather, the magic happens. Who knows what connections you'll make tonight? Maybe you're here because you're new to blockchain or crypto and want to gain more information. Maybe you're a techie and want to know more about back-end development. There may even be some entrepreneurs and experts in the room, and we are always looking to gain insight and collaborate with others. Someone might even be here looking for their next love interest, who knows? Let me give you a quick snapshot of the agenda tonight. We'll begin with the basic understanding of blockchain. What is the underlying system that allows these chains to operate? Why does it matter? How does it impact me? Where we stand with integrating blockchain into everyday life? What are network nodes? Who runs them and why? And then how to get involved. I know it may sound like a lot, but we'll keep it interesting. We don't want this to feel like school. We want it to be an experience that you tell your friends about. Matter of fact, tell them right now on your social media, retweet or share the live stream, and tag those that may be interested. Our team is here to help you grow and learn. No question is too elementary, so don't be afraid to ask. If one of us can't help you, we'll point you in the direction of someone who can. And now, without further ado, let me introduce you to our all-star team. First up, formerly of the fintech company Benzinga, and the man that can explain all things blockchain and governance is our COO and co-founder of EOS Detroit, Adam Zintarski. Next is our other co-founder and now the CEO of our subsidiary company, NFT company, Facings, and a powerhouse in consensus algorithm, blockchain, and so much more, Rob Consdorf. Ruthless Rob Consdorf. Next is longtime crypto blogger and podcaster, a visionary in his own right, AKA Crypto Blood, our executive director, Jerry Rucker. The elder of EOS Detroit, who brings years of leadership experience, our board member and principal of Facings, who is also an extraordinary software architect, Charlie DeMont. Where's Charlie? And the person that holds it all together for our team, attention to detail is her gift, and she never hesitates to step up and get her hands dirty, Miss Marseille Michette. And last but not least is our information security guru, coding superstar, and our spokesperson for this evening, who is also our Chief Information Officer, John J.P. Camunag. So I'm going to hand it with JP in a moment, but Marseille is going to come up and do a little icebreaker. Thanks, April.
So, we are all gathered here for one common interest, and it's to learn a little bit more. Some may be on this level of they've been to tons of meetups and they know a little bit more about blockchain, and some are beginners. So what we want to do is just kind of get everyone familiar with one another and just kind of break the ice a little bit. So I have a icebreaker game / giveaway that I'm going to split the room into two and have you guys collaborate for just a couple minutes. My judges are going to be Rob and JP. So I'm going to split the room. It's not totally equal, but I'm going to go from here this way, group 1, here this way, group 2. And if you guys could collaborate and think of one word that best describes blockchain. I know it's super general, but we just kind of want to see where you guys are right now. All right? And we'll give you 5 minutes.
So she split you in half.
Yeah, I'm like, this side? Yeah. So you go.
We're collaborating?
Yeah. 1 minute left. Charlie, Rob, we've got 1 minute left.
Yeah, that's where my head was going with like exciting, fresh, new, like all of that. Like it's a very like dynamic different thing.
Or we could go Brave New World, go to set.
Hydraulic.
Which one of y'all is going to be a quote for?
They're saying that blockchain is more accurate because it's so hard to use. Only the young people can figure out how to use it. The young people get all stuff first. They play it all first.
We saw the Twitter thread today too.
Yeah.
You guys are good. I got to adjust the words, so I can't.
Oh yeah. I mean, I was kind of automatic everything points and all points. You know what I'm saying?
So he's going to actually go into that. We are a block producer on 7 networks. Block producer, block producer, I don't think of which now. That's not my area. I do BD outside of block producing stuff. So, but
So
once we launch, we were on that primarily. I'm not editing
starting
starting
point
videos.
first. Yeah, you know what I'm saying? Like,
They got a little brand.
Okay, time is up. All right, who's the representative for your groups? Who's speaking? All right. What's your first name? Angeline, thank you for coming. What is your word for your group?
Our word is dynamic.
Dynamic. Nice. All right. Next group. What's your name? Brian, thank you for coming. What is your word?
unnerving.
Unnerving. Ooh. Dynamic and unnerving. All right, now we're going to have the judge deliberate for 1 minute.
Oh, are we supposed to jump now?
Come on, JP. No jokes.
They're both great words. Very
Yeah.
dynamic and unnerving words.
Blockchain?
I gotta go with dynamic. Yeah.
You're not mad at you.
All right. So this side, see me before you leave because I have gifts for you all. Okay? All right. And I'm going to pass it over to JP.
All right, thanks for coming out, everybody. It's for anyone listening or watching online. We're here in Detroit. It's about 10 degrees outside. It sucks. That's Fahrenheit. It's freedom units. For anyone who's who's civilized, what is that, like negative?
It's negative 10C roughly.
Yeah. So I appreciate you all coming out. I know we haven't been having these live talks in a while, so we're getting back into the swing of it. Just as another icebreaker, how many people have been involved with blockchain in some way within the last 2 years? Okay. 5 years? Has anyone owned cryptocurrency for over 8 years? Okay.
A couple of them.
7.5.
7.5? That's pretty good.
2015. No.
What's
7
that?
years. 7 years.
Okay. Has anyone believed so much in crypto that they took their daughter's college fund out and put it all in, and then the market tanked, and then their wife left them, and now they're up here? No, I'm just kidding. No. So here we're regardless of where you're coming from, speak louder. So regardless of where you're coming from, how long you've been involved, to what extent you've been involved in blockchain, this is a good talk to be at because we're going back to the basics and maybe touching a little bit further on what's actually running these blockchains and the systems that underlie them. My name's JP. I'm here with EOS Detroit, a block producer in a blockchain technology company based out of Detroit. I've been with the company, I forgot, 2019? Yes. Yeah, for a couple of years now. I run all of the technical side of block producer operations. That's provisioning, deploying servers, managing our data centers, a little bit of sysadmin work, a little bit of development with open source tooling. So in short, please bear with me because I haven't seen the sun in like 2 months. And I don't get up and talk in front of people that often. So I appreciate everybody coming out.
Doing great, JP.
We also have other members from the EOS Detroit team and the Facings team with us here today. But April already introduced them, which cuts my talk down by like 2 minutes, April. Oh, we don't have a portrait for Roger. We had an awesome artist drop all these portraits of everyone. Roger's brand new, super awesome, smart contract dev. Somebody pan the camera around, zoom in on his beautiful face. But yeah. So I'm really hoping that you walk away from this talk with just a basic understanding of blockchain, a little bit about block production, who's actually running these servers, these nodes that are allowing these systems to operate, a little idea of how the technology itself is actually impacting society, and how to get involved if you're interested. And we'll do a little bit of Q&A at the end. So what is blockchain? This is a question that gets asked a lot and gets a little confusing, especially when people conflate different things. Is cryptocurrency blockchain, or like what's what? I've heard it described as a distributed ledger, as a database, or just a gigantic ASCII spreadsheet. And functionally, it is all these things. It serves the same function. And that's really it. It's a distributed system. Am I good? It's a distributed system that stores records known as blocks sequentially shared across several networks, several nodes on a network. If you were to break it down into its simplest form, that's it. And distributed systems have existed for a long time now. And a distributed system is a computing system whose components are spread across multiple servers, multiple computers. It's a great solution for issues with scalability, availability, gives you access to a system with better performance from different points all over the world. And it creates that redundancy. if one or more of your nodes go down, you don't have to worry about complete and total failure, losing your records. They also come with a number of challenges. Like how do you solve for failures in some of the nodes, possibly impacting other servers? How do you deal with security? Because now instead of having a monolithic piece of software running on one machine, you're expected to secure more, 10, 100, 1,000 servers all over the globe. And you have to keep them all in sync. If the data becomes inconsistent, it becomes unreliable, and the whole system falls apart. So these systems have been around for a long time, but when it comes to blockchain, what actually makes it interesting to me, where the magic really shines through, is when you apply decentralization to the blockchain. And that comes down to no one entity actually owning the system. Like, everyone is on a level playing field. Anyone can participate from anywhere in the world. And if you can manage to create a distributed system that's also decentralized, a whole world of possibilities open up. But how's that possible? And that's made possible by the logic in your software by which all of these nodes running it on the same network can come to a consensus on the state of the ledger, the state of your data. And that's often called a consensus algorithm. So there's a number of consensus algorithms, the most popular being proof of work, which was in the white paper for Bitcoin. Proof of work is the consensus algorithm that Bitcoin runs on. Proof of work actually existed before Bitcoin for a few years. Somebody came up with it to combat spam, email spam. And what Bitcoin did was improve upon that and find a use case for it to where we can actually transact value without having to trust a single entity with control over the system. So with proof of work, essentially anyone can stand up a node. You may have heard them referred to as miners. And they're called miners because they're trying to solve a puzzle using computational power. And the first machine to solve it gets rewarded. They write to the ledger and they get Bitcoin in return. How many of you have heard of proof of stake? All right, it's a good amount of people. So, proof of stake is another popular algorithm where instead of using computational power in competing to validate blocks and write to the ledger, you have to show that you have some stake in the system. And the more stake that you have in the system, the higher the likelihood of you being chosen to write to the ledger to validate transactions. And delegated proof of stake is a version of that is newer. There's a few chains that we support as a company that use delegated proof of stake. And that's very similar to proof of stake. However, people also have the ability to delegate their stake or an essentially vote for different entities to produce blocks, which has a number of different benefits.
I have a question.
Mm-hmm.
Why would they want to do that? Why would they want to delegate their stake?
Well, for me, I'm lazy, and I don't want to do the research. No, well, I didn't even bring up proxies, but if somebody likes a particular group of people or an entity running a block producer, because maybe I'm a developer and I'm interested in using this chain, but I don't like the tooling, or there's features that just don't exist on this chain. And this block producer happens to be somebody who is taking those rewards for validating blocks and putting it right back into the ecosystem. Now, that's not a requirement. However, when you're a block producer, you're incentivized to work for the network. And if you do that, anyone who can see a benefit from you being in that trusted position, they may entrust their votes to you, hopefully.
So it's kind of like using my tokens to vote on who to hire to run the network?
In a sense, yes. Placing somebody in a trusted position. And with your votes, that doesn't necessarily mean that somebody will be in a position to actively produce blocks. And that's always changing, even on some of the networks that we support. Votes and stake are changing constantly. Somebody who is the 10th ranked producer on the chain could very well be out of a paid position, which is usually the top 21 ranked producers the very next day. So that's great because you're not stuck once you've casted your vote. It's not over. You don't have to wait for the next election term. It's instantaneous if you choose to remove your votes. If a block producer did something that you don't agree with, you could immediately remove your stake from their account. So which consensus algorithm is the best? What's that? What we got? Okay. Yeah, so a better question is, what is each of these consensus algorithms actually good for? Because there's trade-offs to every one. And I'm not gonna stand here and tell you that there's a magic hammer for every scenario, every functionality that you'd need or want, desire out of your chain. So with proof of work, it's excellent for moving large amounts of crypto. It is theoretically the most decentralized, as anyone can operate a miner, anyone can stand up a node and take their shot at minting blocks and writing to the ledger. And there's some caveats to that where people join things called mining pools that effectively have people have their nodes work together to solve that puzzle faster and potentially mint that block and share those rewards, which has the potential to centralize the network. Some of the cons of that, slower transaction speeds. Of course, as a network gets bigger and bigger and more people join, that's fantastic. That secures the network to a greater degree. But at the same time, coming to consensus across a growing number of servers on a network comes with a degree of latency. Some of the pros of proof of stake It's more energy efficient since you're not using computing power to try to receive rewards. It's less combative in that sense. You're able to have faster transactions, and there's no special equipment that's necessary to participate, as opposed to proof of work where, at least on Bitcoin, people are using application-specific computational devices that are essentially geared specifically to do mining and nothing else, which can get pretty costly. Some of the cons to this, the security is less proven. Large stakeholders can potentially have a large amount of influence on the verification of transactions. And of course, once your tokens are staked, they're typically locked in for a certain period of time, depending on the network. So who's actually running these nodes? How many people have heard the term validator thrown around in the context of blockchain? What about block producer? Okay. Yeah, so miners, that term came along with Bitcoin. It's essentially exclusive to proof of work. With proof of stake, people started using the term validator, and they essentially perform the same function. And with block producers, that's pretty much interchangeable with validator. However, that terminology specifically came along with delegated proof of stake. And we operate yeah?
What is validating again? Like, why do they get paid?
So validators get paid to verify the validity of transactions within these blocks. These blocks are written sequentially to the ledger, hence the term blockchain. And a block can have any amount of transactions within it, and you're responsible for ensuring that whatever is going on in these transactions is being authorized by the correct parties.
So they're basically like notaries or auditors that make sure the ledger stays consistent?
Yes, in a sense. So basically block producers, they're just running software, right? That's all they do. There's actually quite a bit more to it than that. As a bare minimum, your responsibility is to secure the network and make it reliable by running the infrastructure, running the actual servers that are running the software, in doing so in such a way that operations on the network run smoothly. If you're doing your job, the user experience, they don't even know you're there, it just works. But beyond that, there's a great deal of actually contributing to the network. It's a competitive space to be in because there's other block producers, there's other entities that want that position. They want that responsibility and the block rewards that come with it. And it's not always 21, but within the chains that we support, it is typically the top 21. That's the top 21 entities with the most votes are actively taking their turn producing blocks. And you could get kicked out at any second, really. And that's where contributing to the net, oh, sorry.
Oh, I just had a question. You said there's only 21 nodes that can actively produce. Wouldn't that make it less decentralized? And why would that be a feature you want?
Yeah, so that is certainly a trade-off, and that's one of the criticisms, of course. So depending on what the cap is on that number, and by the way, that doesn't mean that you can't participate or receive rewards unless you're in the top 21. There is positions that are known as standby as well, where additional people can also contribute by having nodes at the ready in case the top 21 fall out. But what you're doing is you are trading a little bit of centralization or decentralization. You're trading that away in exchange for higher transaction rate. And there's a number of benefits that do come along with that. But yeah, there's no getting around the fact that the network is being entrusted into a smaller number of entities that have the capacity for a greater amount of control, which has its benefits there. Of course, it would be easier to, if you were to own more than half of the nodes on the network, sometimes called a 51% attack, you could have the ability to influence the chain, have control over it. And it would be a lot easier to control over half of 21 different companies or groups or teams.
Isn't it 15 though?
Oh yeah, that's right.
Supermajority.
Yeah.
It's the same idea though.
Yeah. But yeah, just like in our own democratic system, there are trade-offs, and it is certainly less decentralized than than proof of work, especially. Yeah. So in contributing to the network, what you're doing is you're in a position where you're incentivized to actually service the users and anyone who's interested in the technology or the chain. Because if you're just pocketing that money, why should anyone vote for you? Which is why if I'm a developer and my company has tokens on this specific chain, and I've realized that you're creating dev tools or you're releasing open source software that's free to the public, I'm probably going to support you, especially if my company's using it. A big problem with a lot of networks, especially newer ones, is the APIs that are running that allow people to actually interface with it. They either don't know who or where to go to find out, hey, I don't know how to run this. Is somebody running this? Can I just use it? And sometimes there's a lack of public APIs. So if I'm developing for a specific chain, and now I find out that there's no way without me spending a great deal of time and effort or money just to use it, my interest is probably just going to go out the window. Because if there's no reliable public services out there for me to even get introduced into it, as a developer, I'm probably not going to care. So you're incentivized to make things more available to people. And yeah.
Yeah, can you tie back that developer involvement to token values?
Oh, certainly. It just has a general user looking to use a service or a product. I mean, if your chain doesn't have any services that I care about, I probably won't use it. So there's really no interest in me purchasing these tokens or this crypto to do something. So yeah, of course I can't say there's a direct link of like, oh, this service exists and it's running, so the price is up. But if you don't have any services, no one's gonna want to use your chain. If there's the functionality isn't there, and I know I might be able to build it on any chain, and if I have to do it myself, what's the point? So yeah, getting people involved in making this technology easy to work with is, I just don't see any reason to not operate that way. Mm-hmm.
So piggybacking off Charlie's question, it sounds like these systems use inflation to pay for people to contribute to the public good, and as long as the overall contributions value created outpaces the inflation rate, theoretically the price should grow, or the value of the ecosystem should grow. You could probably apply the same thought because Ethereum's inflationary. Only a lot of that money gets tied up currently because it's not proof of stake in energy costs instead of investing in people to build stuff.
Right, which is, I don't even remember. What was I? Yes.
Thanks.
So yeah, certainly, you know, and hopefully, ideally, these block producers will be the subject matter experts of the chain, help improve the chain, make it better, without being asked to either, especially being in that position. I know before I came along, I believe it was Rob and Adam on the EOS Detroit team actually helped establish the governance model for the wax chain, which is now the most, I keep hearing now it's the most used chain in the world.
It's the second most by users, next to Binance Smart Chain, actual accounts using it on chain, and it's the first most by transaction volume on a daily basis, by about 6x. So that's real usage.
So I actually wasn't around for the governance work that you guys did. Adam, would you want to speak a little to that?
Yeah, I can come up real quick. So on Wax, they don't have a network agreement too much like something like Telos does. Telos is another chain that we support. EOS at one point had a written out network agreement. Really on Wax, the governance comes down to what's called the Office of Inspector General, and the Office of Inspector General essentially rates the block producers. It's like a rating house. So there's 3 elected officials. Rob was one of the original ones actually, because they asked us to put that together. So he kind of worked out some of the bugs in the system, so to speak. And it's definitely not perfect now either, but those 3 Office of Inspector General guys, they create essentially the criteria at which the network should rate block producers highly. So that goes into things like JP was talking about with like APIs. Are we offering like history, like the actual history on the blockchain in an API format that's consumable? Are we holding events like these to teach other people in our community about the different blockchain networks that we support? There's tons and tons of different criteria, and they change it about once every month and a half to 2 months. And so we developed that system, actually built out the front end and some of the smart contract work to actually enable the election of those inspector generals. And then we've also built another platform on there called Wax Labs. or at least the second version of it, and that allows anybody to go on that's on the network and submit a proposal to get funding to build something for the network. That could be something like a game, since it's on Wax, or it could be something like some sort of open source software that can benefit everybody, right? So it kind of depends on what chain you're on, but Telos and EOS and FIO, I believe, all have systems like this where you can at least go on and there's some way to apply for it, whether or not it's on chain or not. So that's kind of what we did there. And then for Telos, Rob and I, primarily me, but I helped write that network agreement. So, you know, you can go on there and that's kind of the rules that dictate the block producers at the base level. So, or at the chain level. So it's a little bit different than Wax, where they kind of have these separate entities. On Telos, you know, we have an actual agreement that if you are a block producer, you have to follow these rules. If you're a token holder, these are the rights that are given to you by being a token holder, or the actions that you can take on chain. You know, voting for proxies, things like that. It's done at a written level rather than just a code level. So there's kind of different models on all different chains for doing it. But the long story short is that you don't have to know how to do development to participate in blockchain. You know, I have a little bit of a development experience, but I spend most of my time nerding out about that kind of stuff rather than developing. You know, I would say one of the things across all, you know, blockchain networks is that we lack a lot of like marketing and business people. It's very developer focused right now, and that's good because we need people to build stuff, but we also need people to make it real to other people and make it consumable. So you definitely don't have to be a dev to be in this industry.
You guys have any questions so far? I'm sure. Anyone?
Yeah, I was wondering, with proof of stake, right, you mentioned that there's less dependency on physical computers. And so when you develop these softwares that you run to maybe all the things that you guys mentioned that proof of stake is based on, you're still dependent on running this on a physical computer, right? So is there is the usage of computing power. So
Right.
So I'm just like trying to understand if that difference is really there with proof of stake versus proof of work.
Repeat the question.
Yeah. Oh, right. So the question was, earlier it was mentioned that with proof of stake, there's less computing power needed to actually utilize the chain, as opposed to proof of work. So if you're somebody who's building a service on a proof of stake based blockchain, obviously you're going to need that infrastructure to run these services, to host these services. Yeah, sorry if I wasn't clear earlier. What I meant was the computing power needed to actually participate in writing to the ledger to mint blocks. That is where there's a reduction, because with proof of work, everyone is competing with faster and faster, more powerful machines to be the first one to solve a cryptographic puzzle, mint that block, and receive rewards. Whereas proof of stake, the chain isn't waiting. The chain is not waiting for a computer to solve an equation. Based on how much you have stake determines how likely you are to get selected. So there's an element of randomness versus competition in that sense.
I think it can help on that. The way I usually explain that is with proof of stake, you're essentially buying renewing lottery tickets. If there are 100 lottery tickets total and you own 30 of them, you'll probably get to produce 30% of the blocks. Now you probably won't get 3 in a row out of 10, but out of any given 10, you'll get 3 more often than not. Sometimes you'll get 2, sometimes you'll get 4. The specifics for how your renewing happens changes from proof of stake algorithm to proof of stake algorithm. But essentially, proof of stake is buying a lot of set of lottery tickets that, after so many drawings, go back into the pool.
That's a good way of putting it.
Proof of work's like using 100 giant excavators to find love that gets to the bottom of a dirt pit. So it takes massive amounts of oil, energy, like 90 times, or yeah, 90 times more. 100 times.
Because all of these terminologies about bigger block producers seem so interchangeable that it seems like they're kind of getting at the same thing, but
They all
I think it's more efficient.
yeah.
It seems like
It's more energy efficient. That's really the one.
Yeah.
Way more. Yeah.
Oh yeah, so there's a number of blockchains that we support as a block producer. Those are a few of them, and essentially, block producers within delegated proof of stake chains are the backbone. Validators and proof of stake chains, miners, and these terms are in a sense able to be used interchangeably. So yeah, this I'm bringing this up just because this was our entry point into being a block producer. Before we started branching out and finding other chains and projects that we like to explore. But if anyone is actually interested in participating in some way, or maybe starting your own block producer, if you were curious about how you can go about doing that, we actually built some open source tooling that's out there that has the ability to spin up EOS.io nodes, and that is the underlying software or protocol that's open source that's used for a few different chains. You'd be able to, yeah, so, and that's known as Node Suite. And I don't think we have the handouts. So I'll have some information for you if you're actually interested in that. And there's other ways you can participate as well. There's different grant programs out there for different chains where you can propose that, hey, I want to build this, I want to develop this, or code something, or maybe I just want to educate people because I think this product, this technology is great. Specifically for the EOS chain, there's a grant fund under the name of Pomelo where you can propose that you'd like to build something or run a class and educate people, be that in your local community or anywhere in the world, and say, hey, is anyone actually willing to fund this? And anyone with stake or tokens has the ability to say, like, oh, this sounds like this is going to benefit the chain, or I like this idea and somebody wants to execute on it. And then they can pool their funds together to fund whatever your idea or venture is. On the Wax chain, there is Wax Labs, which is a similar grant system, another proposal system there. You can talk to the DBC, you can talk to Nate right here. He's your guy if you want to get involved. Yeah.
Speaking of getting involved, I ain't even gonna phrase this as a question. You missed one of the most important chains we've added in the last year. Black chain.
Oh, that's right.
Because it ties directly to this, I thought you'd want us to add it at this point.
Right.
It's an outlet for getting people involved in a different part of the world.
Mm-hmm.
I'll let you speak the rest of it.
Yeah, so LackChain's a fantastic project, and it's running on that same open source software that was created for EOS originally. And they've spun up their own chain with the goal of making blockchain accessible to areas of Latin America and allocating their funds and all parties involved to to an educational effort to educate people on blockchain. And this isn't something tribal where it's just, you know, one specific chain or one protocol that we want to push. There's no agenda. It's simply building something functional and actually teaching people about blockchain. What you do with that information ultimately helps the entire ecosystem across any chain because people are getting involved, which is fantastic. Some of the groups involved actually came to us because they were looking for some sort of tooling for people who are interested in becoming block producers. And we created some Ansible playbooks, which essentially are some scripts that you could run to automatically deploy software and configure servers without you having to do that by hand. You plug in a few variables and you hit go. And it's a good entry point into, you know, getting involved. You could have it run on your own machine locally. And they wanted to educate people on how to run their own nodes. So it was actually pretty awesome because once we open sourced it, I didn't give it much love after it went out with everything we were doing, and to have somebody reach out and actually say like, hey, this is useful to us and we want to teach people. And it was really the beauty of open source software. That's what you hope for. If someone's like, hey, I found this useful.
For those who haven't heard the term open source software, what's that mean?
So open source software is software where you can see the raw code. It's public. Anyone can look at it. Anyone can propose changes to it. Anyone can take it and change it to make it or use it however they like. That's not something that you pay for. It's just free, open to do whatever you want with it, and collaborate with other people. If somebody wants to make their own version of it, improve it, give it specific functionality that might be useful to somebody else, people can just work together and not have to pay for something. So.
And that public nature is super important for blockchains because no blockchain could exist without that. Because if Bitcoin's code was just given out by some random developer and he's just said, trust me, then we'd never have an economy based on it because it'd be based on just trusting that one person. So the open source is extremely critical to the blockchain philosophy.
Yeah.
As an entity, right, if you were to participate in staking, or just participating in one of the other, the proof of stake model versus the delegated, are you better incentivized to run delegated proof of stake, or how do you come at that decision which works better if you were to run your own, or create your own block?
Yeah, so, right, the question is, like, how are you incentivized one way or the other to run?
I guess which one's better, or why would you pick the delegated model as an entity versus the other, and what incentives
Right.
does one provide versus the other?
Right, like what's the incentive to produce blocks or act as a validator on delegated proof of stake versus proof of stake chains? Well, each chain is different, and I wouldn't personally necessarily choose one chain to operate on over another solely because of the consensus mechanism. It really, for me, comes down to what can you do on this chain that you couldn't do on another, or how are these chains truly operating without an entity that's all powerful or has an obscene, half the tokens in existence that are on this network. Because those are the things that can cause issues regardless of if it's proof of stake or delegated proof of stake. So yeah.
Can I add a little color to that?
Sure.
I like to think of it this way. stake is more competitive, so you have to be active to compete usually. And what we mean by that is like have a team or be a developer or be actively building something and marketing that to the voters and getting them to endorse your node. With a regular proof of stake system, let's say Ethereum 2.0, you can just take your capital, your tokens, your money, you can lock it up. It can be, you can participate more passively. And it's less competitive because there can be many, many validators. So if you're looking at this more financially, you might want to seek a staking system like that where you can receive a passive return. If you're looking to build a team and be active and get funded to build things, then you might want to consider running a delegated proof of stake node. Every team that runs on delegated proof of stake nodes are usually at least 2 people, but up to 10, 12, like the size of our team or even bigger. So it's more of a risk in a sense that you have to have a team usually to succeed. Unless you have a ton of tokens and you can just vote on your own node. And that happens. But it's something that's frowned upon because it's more of a parasitic behavior.
Yeah, if you are interested in like learning more, sorry, we do have to wrap this up because I think we're out of time. But if you are interested in blockchain at all in any way, shape, or form, or have any other questions, you can reach out to me directly. This is my email up top. If you're interested in talking with the entire team, the email at the bottom will basically hit everyone. So please reach out. Do we?
I did have a question.
Mm-hmm.
Because you have to vote for like your block producers and some proof stakes, you gotta vote for other things. I wonder, how do you guys incentivize, how do you get people, instead of just buying a token and just sitting on it, how do you get them to participate? They don't want to be block producers or whatever, but how do you get them to participate? So it's not just 10% of the entire pool collection making all the decisions, even though you have a widely distributed coin, only 10% of people vote, like city, right?
Right. So for people on the stream, the question was, how do you get people to actually participate in this voting process who are holding a large amount of tokens when, if that doesn't occur, that could result in maybe 1/10 of the people or stakeholders actually voting ultimately for everything. So voter participation in the chain, that is a difficult thing to achieve, especially keeping up with the blockchain space. It's impossible to keep tabs on every project or every chain even. And most people, they do end up just sitting on their tokens. But there are things that make it easier, like proxies, where if there's an entity that you trust and you like the decisions or what they stand for, you can actually delegate your stake, your voting power to them. So if any proposals that come along or decisions that are being made, your votes can still be utilized in that way. But yeah, that's a good question. That's a difficult thing to actually achieve in this kind of system. So, yeah.
One thing we see is the voters getting paid. So on Wax, you'll actually make like 5% a year on your balance in voting rewards for participating and refreshing your vote like every 26 weeks or something like that. So there are some chains that try to increase that just by allocating some inflation to the voters.
Yeah. All right, everyone.
Thank you so much, JP. Does anyone have any questions for any of us?
Let this man see more sunlight.
Yeah, questions?
Right.
Justin.
Well, thank you all for coming. We have one more giveaway opportunity. If you have tagged us on any of your social media posts, we'll find out about it and see Marseille, and we'll send you a gift. Make sure you signed in with her and that you come back out next time. We'll have this every month. So just stay tuned.
Topic.
Different topics every month.
Do we know what next month's topic is?
Marseille? Next month's topic?
It's gonna be on FIO, but we're not sure what the topic is yet.
Okay, it'll be on file, but we're not
File
sure.
one of the blockchain that we block release on.
Yeah. So stay tuned, you'll see it on our socials, and we'll definitely keep you updated on everything. Thank you so much for coming. Stick around, grab some more food and drinks. And also, Nate, you want to stand up and tell them about your event downstairs, or?
Come on, man.
This is Nate from
So,
Detroit Blockchain
if
Center.
If you want to, at about 8 o'clock, 7:30 after this, there's a Bitcoin blockchain meetup right around the corner at Detroit Beer Company. Every Wednesday from like 8, we're basically there from like 8 to close. Just said bar, talk, whatever, mingle, talk. No, so come on out, chill if you want to, get a drink. All right.
Every Wednesday. Thank you. And we'll look to see you next time. Thank you.
Shout out to my mom.